Heek and Kogan again in A10. We're going to talk about the United States getting into the war. We went through the last one where we were talking about what they need to win, the bullets, the beans, the bucks. But now we're going to get into some setbacks, and really here we're going to look at some documents of how people were reacting overseas, particularly in France when the United States entered the war. And when it comes to looking at documents, this is, I'm sure as a dad, you've gotten pretty good at like analyzing your kids' artwork. That's pretty much what we're going to do here. Is we're going to look at.
Yeah, this is not my kids' artwork.
Right.
Definitely
no, this is
not.
really, and I can tell you with these, and we'll get into them little by little. All of these that we're going to look at right now, not to like kind of give it away as we're analyzing it. These were all drawn by French children. Luckily, I was able to take a couple of pictures of them somewhere in a museum. But I mean, if we look here, I mean, how do you think the French feel about the U.S.?
They are thrilled.
Yeah.
They are thrilled that we are coming. We see in a little like thought bubble up over here, it says, I would imagine that says victory in French.
Yep.
Pushing the Germans. You can see the little spike on the helmet.
Maybe the sun is rising.
The sun is rising.
These drawings
Yeah.
are just so clever. I couldn't even begin. And I know something about history after doing this for a while.
One of my students one year on this one goes, "Is that Hitler on the lamppost?" And I'm like, all right, I could almost make out the mustache, but no, he's got his beret.
Right.
He's cheering the arrival.
The one
of
little
Americans.
imperfection in the drawing.
I know. Some kid. This is Juliet. I think that's June or July. I think it's July 1917.
Yeah.
So it's 3 months after we've declared war. We haven't arrived yet.
Right.
We are still in the process of mobilizing for war, producing all of our goods, weapons, getting all that food ready from Hoover's Food Administration. But they're thrilled that we are on our way.
I mean, and this kid, he did his homework. If you look at the doughboy helmets, that's exactly how the U.S. soldiers' helmets look like. And of course, they are now meeting up with French soldiers, and you have that because they were all blue, and the French flag is there, and the U.S. flag is there. There's really, really nice connections on this one. This one, jeez, I wonder how old these kids were.
Yeah, I mean, and if that's their penmanship.
Whew.
Certainly a lot better than our students today.
Or me, I'm telling you. And here you have a U.S. ship arriving. Gangplank is there. People are happy. Hats are off. Really nice. It's a U.S. ship.
Probably one of our great white fleets.
Probably.
That we paraded around the world.
This has some nice history connections, as you can see here.
I got Washington, American flag. This is Woodrow Wilson. I think it's a pretty accurate representation.
That's
of Woodrow
a great
Wilson.
one.
And again, it's like the Americans have arrived and almost making a connection that we in France have always been allies.
And since you're bringing up Washington and you're bringing up the alliances, this ship is clearly from the Revolutionary era.
Yep.
Where we became an alliance with France after the Battle of Saratoga, and they helped to provide a navy for us.
Right, and without the French Navy, we certainly don't win the war at Yorktown, where they were able to defeat the British and then siege the city of Yorktown.
And again, of course, you have colonial era troops.
I almost wonder if this is supposed to be like the Marquis de Lafayette, who was one of Washington's closest advisors.
Right here?
No, this has definitely got to be Washington, the
yeah.
American flag, but I almost wonder if one of these three is supposed to be the Marquis. And then obviously we have our doughboys, pushing back, and here you have the German on his knees surrendering, and it's hands up in the air.
You don't know if the kid is doing this on purpose, but the foreground and the present background, you have the Revolutionary era. I mean, it's just
and it was a foregone conclusion, and why one of the main reasons why Zimmerman sends the telegram to Mexico.
Yeah.
They don't want America in this war.
They don't.
They know that if America joins the war, it's just going to be a matter of time before they lose. And as we're going to see, before we arrive, it was some pretty dark days for the Allies.
Very dark days. I mean, it's a stalemate. You don't have any clear winner or any clear loser. As we've talked about in previous lessons, fighting in a trench and living in a trench day to day, there were gains made on that battlefield. Those gains were sometimes in inches or even in feet. And when we're looking at those particular gains, you're sacrificing a lot in terms of manpower, in terms of money, and resources. People are really worn out after 3 years of doing this. So the U.S., almost like coming off the bench to get into the game, all fresh. This is definitely a welcome breath.
I could almost imagine like the status report by 1917 of a British or French general. It's like, sir, status report. Okay, sir, we've lost 5,000 soldiers today. How many feet did we gain? Well, we carved another foot of the trench to get a little bit closer to the Germans. You know, that's almost what I'd imagine was going on. And I just thought of this, that like the Americans getting involved, and Mr. Heeg and I are big sports fan. It's almost like the trade deadline.
Yeah, it really is.
It's almost like acquiring a stud pitcher at the trade deadline, getting ready for the playoffs.
And you're bringing up the numbers. So one retired Army colonel I saw speak, who's a complete like World War I historian. In terms of the leaders, in terms of like generals, one of the shocking quotes, and I wish I could have remembered the number. It takes. It takes like a couple of thousand deaths to like train a general or a leader in the military, that kind of like caught me. I was just, whoa. Because in terms of leaders, not everybody's always happy with the progress or lack thereof that was me. So you're changing up leadership, you're changing up styles, because again, the progress that is being made, if it's being made on the battlefield, you're talking about in feet. It's not drastic.
This is personally my favorite one.
I was going to say, this one is very clever.
This one is one of my favorite ones because, we're focusing on the top part. We clearly see Uncle Sam, reaching across, I'd imagine, the Atlantic Ocean to hand Liberté.
Yep.
She's like the female version of France, almost similar to Colombia.
Okay.
Liberté, giving up a package, guns, these guns then being sent to the soldiers on the front lines. But I love this.
The cowboys.
Right.
Yeah.
Got the French
so
kids.
Cool.
This is before television.
It is.
This is where you're reading dime novels, even over in France, about life in America, and Americans must be cowboys.
So cool.
So he drew the American working, like the packaging is a cowboy, because that was their vision of us.
If you gave me crown, whatever the resources they had, I couldn't even begin. I
draw stick figures.
I would try and draw an eagle, and it would come out horrible. This is one that gets me too. The way this particular child sectioned this off. He have a kid at the table, crying, clearly distressed, upset. What possibly happened? Maybe his father or a relative wound up dying while fighting in the war. Then we have this block over here. I'm guessing this is people, I don't know what to make of this. It's either
I don't know if it's like kids wanting to enlist.
That's what I'm thinking.
Because this is 1916
Yeah.
here, so I'm not quite sure of where the kid was thinking in this one, but it's obvious what the thought process was. In these two. I wish we need to get like a French teacher to like analyze what's.
You know what? There's always one student in the class that does able to translate it, but I forget the translation. I don't know. We'll find a way to edit. But again, why are the French? You could see the impact that this has had on the people of France, particularly their children, and it's really nice to look at how this war is impacting France through the eyes of a child. And there's a bunch more that we can get into, but. When you're looking at the impact it's having, as the United States is getting into this war, the Germans are about 50 miles right outside of Paris. When you're looking at in terms of Paris, there's plenty of cities and towns without France, but I'm sure you heard of Paris. Why? It's a major city. And when you're looking at
capital city,
and it's a capital city, and when you're looking at any major city, particularly capitals, in any particular country, like Washington, D.C. here, you can look or think of a city like an artery within a human body. If you slice an artery, whether it be here, brachial, whatever, you'll bleed out in a minute and you'll die instantly. I like to think of major cities as an artery because as the opposing side, if you capture that major city, that's usually where their government is functioning. From a morale standpoint,
major industrial center.
Yeah, major industrial center. So, the fact that they're about 50 miles outside of Paris, this is something that should not be taken lightly.
And why the French were so thrilled when we get involved in the war, because coupling this around the same exact time, where are we? Around the same exact time, we've got a major revolution going on in Russia.
Right.
The Russian people are angry.
That's
with the Tsar.
Yeah, exactly.
Are angry with the Tsar. They're starving to death. It's almost similar to like what's going on during the French Revolution
Yep.
and the overthrow of Louis and Marie Antoinette. The people are starving to death. The Tsar is living in like the lap of luxury. And Russia, we'll show you the numbers by the end of the war, Russia is by far losing the most amount of men in this war fighting against the Germans.
And we can get into the Bolsheviks separately, but when we're talking about some of the setbacks, going back to our objectives, as we're getting in, the French are happy. As we're getting in the war, the Russians are getting out.
Yeah.
You can't have a revolution going on in your country and still try and fight a war that your people feel is not going to benefit.
In fact, after this revolution, known as the Bolshevik Revolution,
got to enunciate
one
that.
of those words you have to really enunciate in
Yep.
American history, Vladimir Lenin, the new dictator premier of
Yep.
Russia, or now the Soviet Union, signs a separate treaty with the Germans, getting Russia out of the war. He's like, peace, bread, land. I've got to obtain my first objective of peace. Now the Germans are no longer fighting on that Eastern Front. Now they can focus all of their manpower who were over in Russia to the Western Front.
Yeah,
so this is like
this is
a
big
dire
deal.
situation for the Allies now.
Yeah, because for Germany, you're kind of like fighting like this.
Yeah.
Now all you have to do is worry about what's in front of you.
Yep.
Anything else we need to add here?
No, so we better get there, and we better get there quick.
Yeah,
Don't worry, we do.
we do. Thanks for watching.